Hi everybody, welcome to Follow Me, the teaching ministry of Wainfleet BIC Church here in Wainfleet, Ontario. And we are located on Lake Erie and just in the most beautiful part of Ontario, I think, right down here in southern Ontario. And so the reason I say that is because Follow Me goes out on the internet, and we have people from the States and people from other places here in Canada that like to follow our church. And so we're glad to have you with us. The teaching ministry is something that we look forward to every week, and I'm glad you're a part of it, whether this is your first time or whether you tune in each week. And we kind of do this in a less churchy format, as it were. Just being able to sit down, we usually find a great place around the area that we can record. And today I'm sitting under a tree. You say, Pat, why are you sitting under a tree? Well, stay with me and you'll see why in just a moment. I think all of us, in one way or another, have a tree we sit under when we're maybe feeling discouraged or tired. And we're going to talk about that today, really kind of a practical message as we end this COVID season, hopefully, and move into the post-COVID season. I believe that the last year and a half have left people, well, pretty tired and anxious. I think it's left people with maybe some PTSD, maybe some. This has been kind of traumatic for you and your family, particularly if you had kids in school and they couldn't go to school. And so I hope this will be a help today. Now the background is, this is found in the Old Testament in 1 Kings chapter 19. And the background is there's this guy named Elijah. He's the prophet of Israel. Kind of think of him as he's Israel's pastor. He was very burdened to see Israel to love and follow God. And at this time, Israel was doing anything but that. Instead, they worshiped pagan gods. They made their sacrifices. They did a lot of debauchery, a lot of things that they did that were totally against what God would really have for them. And one of these gods was Baal, B-A-A-L, and he was the god of weather, the god of rain, the god of storms. And it's interesting that 3 years earlier, Elijah had prayed, and it quit raining. And this was to get Israel's attention, that Baal's not the one who controls the weather, that Jehovah God is the one who controls the weather. And so it quit raining in this rain-dependent land of Israel, yet it did not bring Israel to God. And so a couple years later, Elijah challenges the priests of Baal, all 450 of them, to a contest between Jehovah God and the false god Baal. That story takes place in 1 Kings chapter 18, and they all meet at a place called Mount Carmel, not Caramel. We all like to meet there, but Mount Carmel, and that's in Israel. It's near modern-day Haifa, which is on the coast. So they gather there to have this contest to see which deity was really real and true. So they set up 2 altars, and each of them had a slaughtered bull on it. They had wood underneath the bull, but no fire. And so the idea was that whoever's God could bring fire and consume the beast, the bull, the sacrifice, then that would be the one true God. So he let them go first. So these guys, they've got their wood and they begin crying out to Baal, "Oh, Baal, show this guy who you are and light this fire. And the Bible says that they cried out, they jumped up and down, they were all over the altar, but there was no answer. And after a few hours of this, Elijah begins to tease them. Oh, your God must be too busy to hear your prayers, or hey, maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's taking time off, or maybe he's asleep. So he was taunting them and teasing them, and so they really got earnest. They began taking knives, and according to their custom, they cut themselves as they were worshiping, and just to show how earnest they were, yet nothing happened. Nada, nothing. Then it was Elijah's turn. He built his altar. He put the wood. He had the slaughtered bull on top. And then he poured 3 big containers, like barrels of water, which was precious because they've been in a drought for 2 or 3 years. Poured this on top of the bull and the wood, and the water went down and filled up a little trench around the altar. There was so much. And then Elijah prayed a simple 62-word prayer. And immediately fire came down from heaven, consumed the sacrifice, the wet wood, all of it. Well, the people were so excited. They began to cry, Jehovah God, He's the God. Jehovah God, He is God. And they were shouting this all together. And then to mock Baal even further, Elijah told King Ahab to go home because he was about to experience a monsoon rainstorm. Now, it hadn't rained in 2 or 3 years. But Elijah began to pray, and a cloud kind of formed out in the Mediterranean, and then it came out over the land of Israel, and it began to rain. Not just rain, it was as we say down south, a frog strangler. It was a big rain. It was a monsoon, and really what that was, Jehovah was even besting Baal when it comes to the weather. Now there was Ahab, who was the king of Israel. His wife was named Jezebel. You've probably heard the name Jezebel before. It's never in a positive way. But Queen Jezebel was quite the person. Very mean, and she put the word out. She put a hit out on Elijah. And she said, hey, you're going to be dead by this time tomorrow. For whatever reason, this vow that she made, it scared Elijah to death. In fact, the Bible says literally he ran for his life. Now, he had just stood up to 450 false prophets. He had just made a big deal over a day of showing who God was. I mean, it wasn't he was a coward. He was a very brave man. But there was something about her. I don't know if maybe he was just exhausted. I think that was a lot of it, spiritually and physically. Maybe she just kind of stood on his last raw nerve, but he hightailed it. And he went from Israel to neighboring Judah. He wasn't out of danger in Judah because Jezebel's daughter was married to the king there. But he went to Judah. He left his assistant. He went a day's walk or hike into the woods, and he found a tree, and he sat under it. It's a broom tree. Other translations call it a juniper tree. If you look it up on Google, you'll see that it's a short tree, kind of like this, where the leaves begin. And he sat down under the juniper tree, exhausted, alone, scared. Does that sound familiar, by the way? Kind of feeling sorry for himself, that he was having to go through what he was going through. And Elijah sits under this broom tree and he gets real with God. Okay, God, I'm exhausted. I can't run anymore. There's no end in sight. Just end my life. I've had enough. Just take my life. I'm through. This is what he was saying to God under this tree. Have you wanted to be alone and go a day's ride into the woods and sit under your broom tree? Maybe your broom tree today, maybe it's just keeping your head under the covers late at night, exhausted, but you can't go to sleep. You just can't turn your brain off. Maybe your broom tree is retail therapy on Amazon. You just find yourself trying to turn off the pain and the fears and the frustration, and so you've probably bought stuff that you didn't need. You look for bargains at 2 a.m. Maybe that's your broom tree. Maybe your broom tree is a bottle of wine every night because you're just exhausted from trying to teach kids and work a job and the home chaos of normal living. Or maybe your broom tree is Netflix or TikTok for hours and hours and hours. You know, what can you do when you find yourself trying to escape under your broom tree? Well, I think there's 3 things that we can do, and we learn it in the story today. And the first one is the importance of sleep and rest. You ever find yourself too tired to pray or too tired to even talk to anybody? You're just too exhausted to even try and carry on a conversation, let alone talk to God or listen to the Word or even open up a Bible and even try and focus on the story. Maybe you find yourself too discouraged to even look up to heaven or even to think about connecting or reconnecting with a church family during these days. Can I tell you something? You're in great company. Elijah loved and he followed God, but he had really kind of toasted himself. He was toast. Here's this wicked queen. I think that was the last straw for him. Like I said earlier, I think maybe she stood on his last raw nerve. I think maybe Jezebel's threat was the straw that broke the camel's back. Just end my life. I can imagine him shouting that out to God. You know, it's interesting that medical science and neurobiology in particular has learned so much in recent years about what the lack of sleep and rest will do to us physically and emotionally. And can I tell you that as a pastor, I submit that it will also do damage spiritually when we neglect to rest and to sleep properly. Many medical journals tell us that sleep deprivation can exasperate pre-existing mood disturbances, and that would be like anger and depression and fear and anxiety. It can lead to confusion. It can lead to fatigue, a lack of vigor to do anything, really depression even. Science says even one sleepless night correlates with these changes in our ability to function. Trauma, and let's face it, I think many of us have gone through trauma these last 12, 18 months. Particularly I think of young parents where you have tried to do your job at home, you've tried to help the kids with school, try to help keep them motivated, try to help them stay tuned in, and man, you find yourself experiencing trauma that has lasting negative effects on really an individual's well-being and ability to function. And really a single traumatic event can lead to psychological trauma. It can build up over time in response to ongoing stress that we find ourselves just living in and day out. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is take a nap or decompress by reading a book or getting your hands dirty gardening, or getting out in the wood shop and just trying to focus and make something, or going for a bike ride or a motorcycle ride, going out for a swim, whatever it might be. You need to give yourself permission during these days especially to be in a bit of self-care like Elijah did. So let me ask you something. What physically recharges you? Think about that question for a moment, even if you have to pause this. What physically recharges you? Now, on the heels of physically and spiritually exhausting time on Mount Carmel, Elijah, well, he had exhausted himself doing really good things. Just like many of you right now. I would say to you that for some of you, your Mount Carmel experience has been just to help your kids who may keenly be feeling frustration, anger, maybe acting that out, fearfulness of what does the fall hold? Are we going to have to do school at home? And by the way, we can help. We want to help our families that you find yourself struggling with the kids. We're looking to line up counselors and resources that we can put into your hands that you can investigate and check out. We want to be a help to you during this time and try to say more about that in a couple of minutes. Your Mount Carmel experience may be just trying to keep your business afloat during COVID. Maybe you've been shut down and you're wondering, are customers going to come back? Or you've diminished the ability to do as much as you've done before. And it's left you weary and frustrated and anxious. I want to remind you, though, it's amazing what rest can do for the body and the mind. The Bible says that Elijah rested and slept. And that's how God has designed our body to be able to rejuvenate itself and for our spirit to be able to stay healthy. There's something else. Not only the taking care of ourselves with rest, and rest isn't always sleep. Rest is sometimes being able to do something that really is invigorating for us. Or certainly we're talking about a good night's sleep. And if you need to, don't be afraid to talk to your doctor about this. You need to sleep, rest. You'll be able to turn your brain off. There's a second thing. He ate nutritional, needy food. Someone has called COVID the great accelerator in life. And some folks have felt themselves age during these last 18 months. It's kind of interesting. The LCBO, that's the liquor stores up here in Ontario, the LCBO has seen well over a 50% increase in sales, some places as high as 70%. Pizza, this is not a surprise. Pizza and comfort food sales are up. That's not a surprise, is it? Cookies, ice cream, candy sales are up during COVID. The comfort food, right? And maybe we find our clothes are a bit tighter a year and a half later. That 10 or 20 pounds that maybe have been put on, that wouldn't be uncommon. Can I tell you, our body was created by God, and it operates optimally with proper and consistent rest and nutrition. Oh, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a pizza or candy or ice cream. Goodness, we all like comfort food. That's not the point. The point is we can't live in that zone and nutritionally be at our best. Think of it this way. What if you never turned off your car's engine? You just left it going, idling in the driveway 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what if you never changed the oil? What if you never took care of the tires and maintenance of the vehicle? Well, what if you put the cheapest gas that you could put in it? How well do you think your car would serve you and your family? Ultimately, it would stop working, or it would operate minimally, or even stop with maybe even a catastrophic failure, like an engine would blow up. And sadly, it never had to happen that way. I mean, let's face it, the design engineers at GM or Ford or wherever your vehicle's from, they never designed our cars to be treated like that. And let me just say, God never designed our bodies to be treated like they've been treated during COVID. Our Creator has a better way for us. And you find yourself where you're not operating at your best physically or emotionally. Well, that's understandable. And this is more than a sermon like this. This is more of a sermon like this. I want to be a help to you. I just want to help. There's simple things that you can do that can make a difference in your daily life. And Elijah found that out. Rest plus nutrition equals energy. Physical energy, emotional energy, we all need that. All right, here's the second question. First one was, how do you recharge? How do you like to recharge physically? Second question, how do you need to adjust your nutrition? What changes would need to take place? And again, if you need to pause this to think about that, or maybe even talk about it with somebody there with you, what do you need to do? And then the third thing, this is the spiritual health part of life. He listened to God. He rested and he slept in order to be able to emotionally being able to focus through all the things that he had gone through. And he slept some more. He ate nutritionally good food so that he could be physically better, so that he could be emotionally better. And now he was in a place where he could work on being better spiritually. That is, he could listen for God. He could talk to God. He could do what God wanted him to do because he was in a better frame. God said Elijah, he put him right back into the fray. The circumstances had not changed. Queen Jezebel still wanted to kill him. Spiritually, Israel was still away from God. But Elijah was equipped to be able to live his life and fulfill his calling. His energy was restored. His spirit was restored. His soul was restored, where he could hear God direct him. Here's the third question. What steps are you taking to hear God speak or guide you in these days? What steps are you taking to be able to hear God or to allow him to guide you? I think God taught a very important lesson. Elijah expected God to dramatically speak, from heaven and from a windstorm or an earthquake, or a fire. But that's not how God chose to speak to Elijah. Get this now. God spoke to Elijah, the Bible says, with a still, small voice. That means Elijah had to be still and quiet in order to hear God speak. You and I cannot hear God on the run. We're just not designed to do that. It has to be in a place of stillness, not for days at a time, not even for hours at a time, but there needs to be time in your life where you can be still every day. It may be literally on the toilet with the kids still asleep. It may be in the shower getting ready for your day, or you may have the opportunity to sit down on the couch and have a few minutes to yourself. As life moves into post-COVID, and we desperately try to latch on to the familiar, if we've learned anything through COVID, I hope we've learned the joy of living with margin in our lives. As sports begin and the things that we missed begin to open up, and how fun to see our kids laugh and play and be out on the field together and to visit with parents again. How fun it is to be able to go to a restaurant with friends and sit down for an evening. All of that's wonderful, but please, I would just urge you, don't get back into the rat race of being busy 8 nights a week. Don't allow the busyness to keep you from being able to hear God's still small voice speaking to you. You know, as we live our lives, I think this is really important for us right now. Protect your physical, emotional, and spiritual health moving forward. I will tell you, Wainfleet BIC Church, we want to help you. We want to help you with resources, and if that means financial resources, if that means being able to put the right information into your hands, whatever we can do to help you, a list of recommended counselors that you could sit down with. I will tell you, during COVID, my wife Carol and I have seen a psychotherapist as we work through a marriage tune-up, as we work through just dealing with COVID in life. Oh man, that has been so helpful. We all need help sometimes. And don't be afraid of that. And we want to help you with some recommended counselors. We have webinars that we can put you in contact with. Community, a church community. There is strength in that as you worship together and pray together. Encouragement. All of this is important in being able to hear God in these different days, these new normal days ahead of us, and how to be the hands and feet of Jesus in a post-COVID world. That people need to know that others care. The gospel of Jesus is this daily call to wholeness, and it's been provided by Jesus on the cross. Jesus was not killed on the cross. He gave his life on the cross to bring us hope, to bring us love, to bring grace, to bring new life, new beginnings, and a new way of doing life led by his teachings. He calls us to follow him. He calls us to give our lives into his hand. And if you haven't done that, I invite you to give your life to Jesus even today, to reach out and say, God, this life is bigger than me. And Lord, I'm glad you're bigger than my life. I turn my life, my brokenness, my mistakes, my sin, my life, it's all put into your hands. Would you make me brand new? Would you give me a new hope and a new beginning and a new life? Can I tell you, that's a prayer he will always answer. And if I can help you in any way, you can reach out by email, pat@wainfleetbic.com. And if we can help you in any way, we're here for you. If you're local, we would love for you to join us on Sunday mornings, whether it's live stream on YouTube or whether it's in our services at 10 a.m. And maybe you're feeling to the place where you can venture out. We'd love to have you and be able to meet community, be able to meet like-minded people who are just trying to figure it out as well. And we're here for you and want to help. You are loved and cared for today, and as we go through this COVID, I think these 3 things would be a great help, as maybe you find yourself under your broom tree today. I hope you have a great week, and thank you for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.